Showdown Bandit video game review. This game is from 2019. And yeah, I thought this game was fine. And yeah, this video is not going to be too, let's go with, it's going to be rated like PG-13 and up or so. And yeah, I'm not going to be spoiling anything from the game. Real quick, I believe they call it housekeeping. Yes, I do intend to believe the physical pain is so sufficiently under control now. I should be able to do one video game review per week, and I'm back to playing video games, so it won't all be from memory, though, you know, several weeks will be games I played years ago from memory. But yeah, there we go. Yes, the psychological horror of this game in part uses the fact that, yeah, you're playing as a marionette puppet on strings. Let's see, yeah, the scream that the bandit lets out at the very start, at the realization that this is his existence, yeah, it's decently blood-curdling. You know, I wasn't 100% certain. I think the idea is that this is a brand new bandit. Like, these are the first, like, he just opened his eyes at the very start of the game, you know. And yeah, it's the kind of thing, like, either it makes you want to know more, or the game probably just isn't your kind of thing, you know. But yeah, it's an effective opening. You know, it starts with a point of view shot. You peek out of the tear in the box that you came in. You look at your fake hands. You're told there's a master plan that you're playing some part in, that, you know, you don't yet understand it. And, you know, the various levels are set on a stage for performing with puppets. The loading screen when you change between areas is the stage elements being removed as if by stage hands. Let's see, and yeah, you yourself are lifted from above by the puppeteer, then new one is placed. I suppose I'll just very briefly talk about, so the developer and publisher of this, Kindly Beast, you know, basically, yeah, stopped making games, and I don't know that I want to get too into, like, you know, sadly, even indie developers, it is this thing of, you know, yeah, there were mass layoffs, and there was talk of a toxic work environment. You know, that doesn't only happen for big companies. You know, there's a really big problem. You know, we have to regulate capitalism to avoid this sort of thing happening. And I think it's a decent time to address, yes, this game is barely, like, I think you can maybe get it some places, but it's not like, you know, it's not being sold normally. I realize, you know, I would argue this is not the least, like, I've done reviews where I talked about something that practically nobody has played, and certainly no one today can play, so this isn't the most, you know, I got this when it was free, you know, a while back, and it was still in my library. You know, I believe it's taken down from the Steam store, but it was still in my Steam library. I was like, I don't know, it sounds fine. You know, I don't want to be promoting Kindly Beast, obviously, but I like to think none of my videos are just promotion. I try to always analyze, bring something in. But yeah, I appreciate that this video probably will be of little use to anyone who didn't also just realize, oh hey, I completely forgot about that game. I got it for free. I don't know. You know, yeah, in case that's you want to try to figure out if this is a game you might like, yeah, it's your lucky day. Yes. I found one ex-puppet that was hanged, you know, sometimes, let's see, yeah, sometimes you will find money. The puzzle elements are quite minimal. You find clues written on paper, and, you know, just, yeah, it tends to just be go to a place, activate a thing, or maybe pick up a thing, then go to another place. I will say I don't, like I said, I don't want to be promoting Kindly Beast. If somebody else had, you know, bought this off them, I wouldn't pay a lot of money, but I very rarely pay a lot of money for video games, for individual video games. And you know, if I'm buying like a big bundle, that also has to be an amazing sale. But I wouldn't have minded seeing more of this world. But yeah, that's another big thing. This is not quite a complete story. It's not even like, oh, it sets something up. You know, I just recently finished watching The Acolyte and did a review did video on the first season and a review in case we don't get a second season. Yeah, there's threads left to pick at in upcoming, you know, potential upcoming seasons. But if we never get another season, there was a story there, and I wouldn't really say that's the case with Showdown Bandit. Like, it feels very much like they were really, really hoping, you know, obviously they didn't expect to have to go under and such, but they were really hoping that people would love this first part so much and be, you know, it's like an episode of Lost or something, you know, it's just, you're left with questions and not really, yeah, if this had literally just been a demo, I think it would have been less, like, I feel bad for anyone who spent money on this, especially now that, you know, they're never going to get answers. But yeah, I think that might be about, yeah, so over the course of this, you gradually uncover what's going on. People keep talking about the show must go on, and, you know, the threats that, you know, yeah. And yeah, you know, the gameplay for almost all of this is limited to clicking where you want to walk to in a bird's eye view, similar to, you know, Commando's games, except there's only the one playable character. Occasional cork gun shooting in a first-person perspective, which, you know, I think there are some decent decisions there. Essentially, you have unlimited ammo, and this is because the cork, it's one of those toy guns where the cork from the cork gun is tied on a string, so you have to reload for every shot, but you'll never run out of ammo. You know, but yeah, reloading for every shot, and sometimes, you know, it has this decent, like, sort of, it's not isolating, but there's a psychological thing there, because usually you can see a chunk of the level and suddenly you're seeing very little of it and from a different perspective. And if, you know, there might have been like 3 or 4 enemies in an area before you triggered the which I do also really appreciate, it doesn't just suddenly say, okay, now you are in first-person perspective. You know, you get to there's these circles on the ground in some areas where if you go up to that and then you click on the icon that pops up, then you enter it, and you can just right-click to leave it at any point. There's no, you know, but yeah, suddenly you're in a completely different perspective, and you have to remember, wait, where were the different enemies, you know? Yeah, let's see, and yeah, you know, I found myself intrigued by the mystery, really wanting to find out more about this demented performance I find myself forced to be part of. You know, it is undeniably horrifying to imagine this loss of control of one's own destiny. You know, I don't know how much thought they did put into it, but I always love when video games comment on the illusion of player control. I don't know why the emphasis came out on the wrong syllable there at first. This is something that the I can't believe I'm blanking on the is that a spot? Anyway, some games like System Shock and BioShock, I don't know that I want to specify exactly which one, but some of those play with this idea because, yeah, at the end, like, those of us who love video games, we like to talk about, oh, you can, like, video games allow you to do anything. And if you really think about it, like, there are some that do, but a lot of video games, a lot of mainstream video games, you are basically forced to do what the game has, what the developers planned for you to do. There's little actual freedom, and in this you literally are controlling a puppet, like you, the player, are controlling a puppet that is horrified at his existence as a puppet. Like, before you start being able to control the bandit, you realize the existential dread of his condition, and then you play. It's like those survival horror games where you can see, okay, there's definitely something horrifying, behind that door or something. You hear a scream or something, and you're like, there's nowhere else for me to go. That is a really cool, it has an effect on you as a player. It's different from just watching a movie where at the end of the day, if a horror video game scares you too much, you can just stop playing. The moment you stop playing, it isn't happening. You might still be thinking about it, but at the end of the day, like a movie, it's going to play out the exact same every time. Now, let's see. Yeah, I thought they did a decent job of coming up with, like, the various characters and enemies you encounter tend to be puppets. I thought they did a decent job coming up with different, there's this kind of zombie-ish puppet. There's, there's different, the dangerous puppets you encounter. A lot of them are humanoid, as you yourself, but some will have a special weapon, some will move in a very distinct, different way. I think I want to just very briefly talk about, something that, there's a handful of things that in this game are set up, and I know, I get it, I realize they wanted to follow up on them in future. It's set up. They're not being a payoff because you couldn't finish the project. That doesn't necessarily mean, it's like, I find it more frustrating to watch something that has no setup just payoff with no setup, and sometimes no setup or no payoff at all, than something that has setup that ultimately isn't paid off on. But it was, I found it kind of annoying. I think it was the fact that there really wasn't anything, like, honestly, I thought the ending was cool. There was something there that, but it really wasn't an ending to the story and universe that had been set up. It was just like, something dramatic happens, I think it even does say, come back next week, because it's a show. It's a series of shows. And, I really wish that they had made it. Like, I feel like, if you only play one of the chapters, if you only play the first, I believe they're called chapters, in Alan Wake, you're going to be left with some unanswered questions, but something happened that felt like honestly, the ending of this game, it kind of felt like, if it had come, like, halfway through the game, that would have meant about the same to me. You know, I didn't feel like I accomplished anything. Like I started in one place, I ended up in another, and then it was over, and yeah, again, if it were a demo, if nobody was ever asked to pay any money for this, I would be more lenient on it, but yeah, they were originally charging money for this. Now, there is stealth in this game, and I don't think it's quite well handled. Yeah. Right. I just realized I didn't write the following down, so I'm going to say it real quick so I don't forget. There's a couple of cool mechanics that they came up with that appear, you know, some around the halfway point, some very close to the end. I really, and that's again, yeah, I get it. They wanted, you know, though, at least one of those two was going to be a bigger part of following show. Let's go with that episode. And yeah, that would have been really cool. It did seem like they just put it there to just tell people this is going to be cool in the future. You know, you don't get to use it that much before the actual game ends, you know. And this other thing, which I know they realized this is like probably the best, you know, it's a real standout, at least as far as gameplay goes, because once you've completed the entire game, you can replay just that part. You know, other than that, you can't really, you know, it has one save slot, so every time you save, you overwrite other save games, and yeah, you'd have to backtrack a lot after beating it to go back to the place where this happened. So they just put it there in the menu, you know, to yeah, keep people engaged in, you know. And there was, I don't know why they didn't capitalize more on that, because it's smart to put it right there in the main menu. You know, I'm not ruling out, maybe I'll fire up the game tomorrow and do another run through of that, but it seems tailor-made for a high score option, and as far as I could tell, there wasn't one, because it's basically, you know, it's a thing where you have to do something fast. And yeah, like I don't know why they didn't make a high score, like even just local. I get, you know, maybe not like online leaderboards, but just like let us keep track of how many of the things, because it is one of those things where even if you don't hit everything, you could still complete the part. And it does also feel kind of weird out of context, you know, replaying. You know, I'm recording this right after playing it because it popped up in the menu, and you know, yeah, when I actually did the part, it was the culmination of build-up, and now playing it without that build-up, I don't blame them for not redesigning it to where it doesn't need the build-up, but it did feel a little awkward. Now, so for the stealth, it does not bug me that you cannot noise distract. You know, I think in the past I've sometimes been too hard on stealth games that don't let you do that. I believe I did say that in one of my videos on, I guess, either Outlast or the Outlast DLC, which I want to say is called Whistleblower, which is fairly logical since that's who you play as. And I regret saying that, because I do think that there is a place for video games that have stealth where you can't really do anything other than hide and run. And yeah, I do absolutely think that, yeah. And also that, you know, there are a number of areas where stealth is the only option. You can't hurt your enemy. But, like, I don't know why they made it so that the hiding, crucial for stealth, obviously, is just not very well handled. I think there's... I think there were a few places where you could basically hide by... You know, it's always breaking line of sight. And I don't know why they didn't just have, like, you know, an occasional dark static spot similar to dark with a Q. You know, D-A-R-Q. Which also has fairly limited stealth, but yeah, it works. You know, you hide in these spots and wait for the enemy to pass, where here, like, a lot of the time it was just like, oh, you gotta leave the room, you know. And yeah, it just leaves these very strange... Like, as far as I can tell, there were times where I was basically expected to deduce where an enemy was without being able to... Like, you can go into a room and see an enemy, and then before that enemy spots you, you leave the room, and then you're supposed to, like, basically deduce, okay, based on his walking speed, and, you know, sometimes you can tell, okay, this is, you know, he walks in a circle like this, or he walks, you know, sometimes you're able to deduce the path, at which point, yeah, I appreciate, then it is... I can absolutely respect just saying, well, you know how fast they're moving, you know where they're going. You gotta just, you know, just either try to intuit it, or legit just, like, sit there with a digital timer in your hand and time how long it takes him, and then go, you know, I respect that. I love a video game that's like, well, what, you're gonna, no, this is how it is. You're not, it doesn't hold your hand. You know, I love video games where you get a clue, and then the you know, the game doesn't store the clue. You have to be sitting there with, you know, pencil and a pad of paper. I seriously respect that, so I do really appreciate that. But there's a bunch of times where you really can't wait to witness the path, and, you know, yeah, sometimes there's more than one door. Hold on, I have the let's see. Hold on. Oh, right. Yeah. I took a break from playing this game, so it's been a while since some of this stuff. Yes, right. Yeah, I appreciate that a number of the enemy encounters allow for stealth, and some of the ones that don't, it was easy to avoid the enemy. Let's see, ones that do have stealth, some of them there are 2 doors to those rooms, so you can get to the other path if you simply cannot get through the room in, yeah, through the first door. You know, at least in theory, yeah, here we go, yes. In theory, you could get to the other door. Not in practice, at least a lot of the time, because you can't get to the other door. It's only, like, when backtracking that's possible. I forget if it is actually possible, you know. So, yeah, that is a very... And it also just, like, I gotta admit, there were times where I was kind of getting lost in this game. I think I stand by that I didn't want them to completely hold my hand, but there were a couple of times where I couldn't quite tell where it wanted me to go, and I think it's a little bit too open for this little direction. You know, I think they should have done at least slightly more to make it clear where to go. Yeah. There were a bunch of times where I did end up just, okay, I guess this is where I go. Oh, okay, here's an object I need. Oh, there's a lever, or sometimes it's a bell you can shoot with the cork gun, you know. That'll you know, yeah. At that point, it's either, okay, I guess I go through the next door, or I guess that was what I needed to get on this path, so I'll return to an earlier area. I do think they have a decent amount of the, you know, these days I can't really sit playing a video game for a huge amount of time without any kind of break. So I am very reliant on saving mechanics being, allowing me to play. Sometimes I'll play for 10 minutes in a row and then have to take a break. So yeah, I think they did a decent job. It's the banker. You have to find the banker, and much like it appears to be the same guy, even though he pops up in completely different areas. But that's that's a video game convention. There's, I want to say, is it maybe some of the. I haven't played that many Resident Evil games, but I remember, because like in Resident Evil, I want to say Resident Evil 2, there's like a box where you can store weapons since you have a very limited inventory, whatever, and you'll come across apparently the same box, or I guess maybe there's some kind of teleporting technology between them or something, and I feel like in later games there's a store clerk who's apparently the same guy each time. Am I remembering right that there was like a joke about that in one of those? And it might not be Resident Evil, but some games have that. So, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, you find the banker, you walk up to him, you press save, it double checks if you want to overwrite your last save, and yeah. Let's see. So yeah. The much reported slow movement is not unique to this, considering it is survival horror, where disempowering the player is important, even necessary. But it is crucial to do so in a way that does not make your game not be particularly fun to play. And yeah, as others have pointed out before me, you should at least be able to move faster when backtracking, because there's a certain chunk of the game that is just backtracking, and it's just ridiculous to be moving this slow. Like I mentioned Commandos earlier. You can move faster in those games. I don't think I've ever played. I guess maybe Cybermercs and maybe no, not even Subterra Core. So just briefly, the Commandos games, Robin Hood and the Legend of Sherwood. I want to say it's called not Cybermercs. Most games I've played that have a bird's eye view. Your character can move, and obviously, if you're playing a real-time strategy game, a lot of those also have bird's eye view. Your soldiers might not be able to move fast, but you have vehicles that can move fast. So yeah, I don't think it was necessary. I appreciate wanting to disempower the player. If I had been working on the development team, I would have suggested a sprint bar that, if you're going through an area and there's no real danger, you can sprint. And you could make it so that, if there's an enemy in the area, I don't know, maybe the bandit is too scared to sprint. Or maybe if you sprint, the enemy immediately hears you and rushes over or something. But to not have anything like that is just not, it's so annoying. Now, let's see. Then we have the so for at least some enemies, it appears there is no permanent way to kill them. You can only temporarily take them down. This is, of course, perfectly fine. Adds the tension. Let's see. Yeah, so I don't think I saw one get up while I was still in the room. It's possible it just resets when you leave the room. I get that it fits the overall atmosphere. The gun really does not feel like it hits hard, which I do think takes some away from it. I think it would have been a cool place to break from the verisimilitude. Let's see. And it shoots slightly slowly, primarily because it has to reload after every shot, which takes maybe a second or more. And let's see. Yeah, as mentioned, I did mention some of that, and the already. And let's see. If you're in a room, there's two enemies, they've already discovered you, you may not be able to shoot both of them before at least one of them manages to attack you and take away one of your 5 strings per hit until you perish. So this adds further tension. Let's see. But yeah, because of the movement speed can also be annoying. Sometimes feels like you have to aim slightly ahead of where the enemy currently is, since the projectile doesn't move as fast as real-life lethal guns do. And let's see. A lot of the enemies move the same speed as you, so you know, if they have spotted you, as long as you can keep moving, they might not be able to catch up to you. You know, if it kind of depends on if there's an enemy in your path blocking you from getting far enough away before the other one gets to you. And you also do have the fact that, you know, sometimes when you enter a room, you don't know exactly where to go, so you might end up, you know, backing yourself into a corner. But yeah, the fact that they might not be able to catch up, I think may have been a mistake. I think they should have been at least slightly faster, at least when you're, maybe not when you're standing still and shooting them, but when you're moving away from them. That would be a decent, you know, because there's a certain logic to that. You know, if you're like, if you're approaching some, you know, yeah, if you're about to grab something that isn't moving, you might move. You know, you might not be in a huge hurry, but if it starts moving, you might, you know, rush to catch up to it. Let's see. You know, there's also the element that if you move really fast towards something, you know, I'm talking about like if one of your pets is in, you know, if is standing in a place where you're like, oh, please be careful, you might fall, and so you might slowly walk up and try not to spook them, not to scare them, in order to, yeah. So, let's see. That brings us to, yeah. Let's see. Yes, you know, I think the enemy should have moved at least slightly faster, so that if you don't get away fast enough, they catch up. And let's see. And yeah, you know, I think enemies that are at least slightly faster than the player are a crucial ingredient in survival horror. I'm not sure I can think of a classic survival horror game, a good survival horror game, that doesn't have at least one enemy type that does move at least slightly faster than the character does. You know, or, you know, some of them, you know, both the player and the creatures have a sprint function, which, you know, yeah, if you try to sprint away and they sprint after you, you won't have put any distance between you. Let's see. Yeah. Occasionally there'll be a boss, an enemy that is accompanied by scary music, which most of them aren't, and they do this special lighting effect on it. Yeah, I'm not 100% certain if you can kill it, but, you know, he can kill you with just one hit. He still does move at the same speed as you and the regular enemies. And let's see. There's a non-zero amount of areas where there's this train, which is literally just a large puppet roaming the tracks, never slows down. You know, so you have to be careful about walking on tracks, which of course some of the time you're forced to, and they do this great thing where you see that it's moving on the tracks, and you even see it like take out another puppet, which I do also appreciate. You know, there's not any actual blood. It's all psychological horror. There's no blood, gore, violence in this at all. But yeah, you know, you see, okay, it moves on tracks, it kills puppets, and then you get to an area and like there's simply no path between where you are and where you got to get to that does not at all touch train tracks. So very, very nicely done. And yeah, sometimes it'll leave the track, and it's not just, you know, oh, you know, I just gotta, it's a neutral thing that just, if I stay off the tracks, no, it, once it spots you, it's gonna try to get to you. And, you know, there's the then you have this element that it can move anywhere that's roomy enough. But there are certain places where you can go where it cannot, because you are smaller than it. And yeah, it's very... They did a really good job on that. It's another insta-kill enemy, and yeah, it is very much this thing of just... They had some really cool elements in this game, and some of them they use enough. I'm not sure that I would say that... Yeah, I think overall, like, the train stuff, I think they use enough to... that it doesn't feel like they're just... Yeah. Yeah, I felt like, okay, this actually does... what's the word? It lives up to its potential, you know. And I think that might be what there is. Yeah, I played this for an hour and... let's see, what was it, 22 minutes. And I mean, I didn't get any of the 8 achievements on Steam. And yeah, I'll just briefly some subgenres that I would consider this belonging to are real-time tactics, survival horror, and stealth. And as usual, my rankings for all the games I've played are in the... There's a link in the description box to... Yeah. Yes. But yeah, this is fairly fairly low down on the list for those. Yeah. Yeah, I think this could have been substantially better. Again, even judging it as something that I got for free, that's clearly only supposed to be part of... That's maybe also, I would not have hated if this was listed... You know, I have the Steam link open for it right now. It's still just called Showdown Bandit. I think it should have just been called Showdown Bandit Episode 1. And then people could be like, oh, where's Episode 2? Oh, it's not coming out. I don't really want to... Because, like, as it is, you can't tell that, like, even if you look at, like, you know, how long to beat, oh, it doesn't sound like a long game. Yeah, some full games are not super long, you know, but yeah, it really didn't... I knew going in that it would not be a complete product. This is not me being, like, bitter and feeling lied to or something, but I do think that even for that, even with them believing they would get to make more, I think it's a good idea to make something that is very standalone and either just leaves you, you know, thinking, oh, I wonder what happens next with that, or, you know, just, yeah, something like that, instead of just, you know, yeah, it feels like reading the first, you know, the opening pages of a novel or something. Like, you're being told all this stuff that never gets resolved, you know, and I don't think that was a smart way to, like, you know, if we're talking demos, you know, some of the, yeah, Half-Life 1, the demo is basically, you know, yeah, it's a standalone. It doesn't even really fit inside the story of the game itself, but yeah, there's a story there. You're told what you have to do, and then you go and try to do exactly that thing. And you know, the yeah, Deus Ex 1 had 2 demos, both of which I believe were just the 2 opening missions, which are sufficiently self-contained that it feels satisfying. And yeah, then you have this where it's just mentioning a bunch of things that never end up becoming important, and just, yeah, I think it could have been much better. 5 out of 10. You know, I would like to say, honestly, please let me know in the comments if, you know, I do think this idea of, you know, creepy puppets is really cool. I think there could be something, there are creepy puppets in some survival horror games. Some of the, yeah, I don't know if I want to give away exactly which, but more than in more yeah more than one survival horror game has it, and at least one of the Silent Hill games has it. And yeah, you ask people, and yeah, they're some of people's favorite enemies because they're creepy. They're too, it's the uncanny valley. They're a little too close to human to not be like, you know, it's just, yeah, there's just something very creepy about imitations of human life that don't completely, that aren't quite human life. It's a thing that really triggers our we're trying to classify it. Is it dead? Is it alive? There's so many stories where puppets and dolls and such come to life, and yeah, and people get trapped in them. I would really love a game that is much, in has a lot of the elements that this has, but is a complete product and, fixes the gameplay issues that I mentioned. Because, like, yeah, some of the stuff I really, honestly, if like episode 2 came out at some point in the future, and it had nothing to do with Kindly Beast, wouldn't be giving them any money to play it, I'd have to consider it. I really, yeah. Oh, right, I wanted to just briefly note, I saw at least one person say that they thought the game was, I forget if they said not scary or never scary, but, essentially the same, just two different ways of saying the same. If they had said hardly ever scary, I might be like, you're being very, very direct about it, but I guess I can appreciate where you come from. But they specifically, they either said not or never, and I disagree. There are definitely times where this is outright scary. I think it's one of those things of, like, to some people, in order for something to be scary, it needs blood, violence, gore, that sort of thing, and I respect that. A lot of my favorite horror movies are, for people who are not super familiar with me, among my favorite horror movies are The Thing from 1982, The Fly from 1986. I cannot believe I'm blanking on. Hold on. Videodrome. Absolutely love really graphic horror movies. I just don't think everything has to be that. I really respect psychological horror. I think there's a lot to love about that as well, and I do think it is very well handled here. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know that I would suggest, like, yeah, if you're maybe 13 or older, I could see playing this. I don't think it would be too intense for you. I don't think they were ever trying to convince, like, 8-year-olds to play this. Like, it has puppets. You like puppets? No. But there is sometimes something scary about, yeah, that was also a thing with, like, some of the Chucky movies kind of toyed with, well, is he a human in the form of a doll? Like, can he feel, if you prick him, does he bleed, kind of thing. And there's something really scary about sometimes talking puppets that don't, like, because they don't really necessarily express pain. Not all of them express fear. So it is this thing of, like, wait, how much do they understand? How much do they feel? Is it just that they can't express it? Think about how scary that is to be feeling something intensely and not be able to express it. I think they hit on something really, really interesting with this. And yeah, I think it's too bad that it didn't work out better, but I can't pretend that it did. And I've been talking for almost 45 minutes. I kind of thought this would be like 5 minutes, but yeah, there you go. It struck a chord with me. What can I say? Not more than I already have, because yeah, this got longer than I thought it would. But yeah, I'm back.